morning. It's been interesting over the last couple of weeks to watch the jockeying for power in the Liberal Party in New South Wales in the wake of Gladys Berejiklian's resignation. How different names were put forward and different people rose and said, look, I'm the right person to lead the party and so on. But how other people were jockeying for positions of power and authority around that person, looking for places of honour and glory, if you like, in the new cabinet, in the new leadership team, in the state government. And it's easy to throw stones at politicians and laugh at them and shrug your shoulders and roll your eyes, but it's what we do. We like to be seen with people who are important, or people who are successful, or people who, in whom we might bask in the glow of reflected glory, if you like. I remember one day we were walking down the streets of Sydney, back in the 70s. It was my mother, grandmother and my brothers, myself, walking down one of the city streets, George Street or Pitt Street, Elizabeth Street, one of them. And Mum stopped and said, look, quick, over there, it's Paul Hogan. And this was in the days of the Paul Hogan show. He was on TV and well known and doing ads and so forth. And sure enough, I had to look and she pointed, oh yeah. He looked different. He didn't have his TV garb, his shorts and shirt and boots and whatever. He was dressed like anyone else, doing what anyone else does. In fact, of all the hundreds, maybe thousands of people on that street that day, he was the one we noticed. She didn't stop and say, hey, look at this fellow and that fellow, or that person, her, him. We noticed Paul Hogan because he was famous, a celebrity. That's what we do. In our story that we continue to read from Mark's story of Jesus, we're well into chapter 10, and here Jesus says again for the third time, we're going to Jerusalem, we're nearly there, and when we get there I'll be arrested, tried and handed over to the Romans who will crucify me. And on the third day I rise again. And he says it in detail. And once again we hear a story of the disciples who don't quite get it. First of all, it's James and John come up. And there's differences of opinion as to whether James and John actually do get it or don't get it. They come up to him and they say, Jesus, we ask that you grant us a request. He says, yeah, well, what would you like me to do? And they say, well, when you come into your glory, we'd like to sit one at your right and one at your left. And Jesus says to them, you don't know what you're asking. Can you drink the cup that I will drink? Can you share in the baptism with which I am baptized? They say, yes, we're able to do that. We can do that. And he says, you will drink my cup and you will share in my baptism. But to sit at my right and left, that's not for me to grant. That's for those for whom it's already been prepared. Do James and John totally misunderstand Jesus when he says he's going to the cross to die? Do they still have in mind, as the other disciples, that he's going to become a warrior king and rule Israel and rout the Romans and restore glory and honour and power? Are they vying for positions in this new kingdom on earth? Or, as other commentators have said, they actually do get it. They understand that the glorification that Jesus is talking about and that they refer to is not some worldly, if you like, glorification of power, of might, of wealth, of celebrity, of fame, of victory, of, it's actually about struggle, suffering and death. And that through that, Jesus will find new life. For in Mark's Gospel, this cross becomes the central pivotal point. For Mark, probably in history. It's the point where that is counterintuitive, countercultural, turns the world upside down. Whilst the world around Herod and the emperors and kings and all the others, the religious leaders, all vie for power and might and fame and glory and strength, to have more money and authority and stuff in their lives. Jesus lets go of everything and walks to death. And he says, let go. Follow me and let go. Because the way into life is through dying and rising again. Dying to ourself, to our ego, to the things that trap us and hold us and hold us in their grasp, in their grip. The addictions and other seductions and things of life that hold us, including power and wealth and fame and celebrity and so on. The cross, Jesus hanging on the cross, is a moment of glory. Because all that the powers of the world can do in bringing their violence and their power and strength and might upon him and crucifying him cannot contain him. Because in the next part of the story, Jesus rises into a new way of being, a new life. A new life that's expressed in the people in a new way. A power in the world, the power of love. And as one commentator says, it's not the love of power, but the power of love which overcomes all things. And so the glorification of Jesus is not a way of rising to the top, but going deep down to the bottom. Walking through the valley of the shadow of death and knowing that God will not let him go, but will bring him through to new life. And are James and John beginning to see this and saying, we want to share in that with you? And that your cup is the cup of suffering, and your baptism is this baptism of dying and rising again, which is what the image of baptism is about, being thrust under the water, drowning if you like, and being lifted up into new life. That's what Jesus is about. Maybe James and John begin to get it. And he says to them, yes, you will share in my baptism, you will drink my cup. And they go on to suffer and struggle as followers of Jesus. But they find the way into life. And their suffering is not lost, but grows a new life within them. The other disciples hear this interaction, they come and they're envious, they're jealous, they're angry with James and John. Who do you think you are? What are you asking? What about us? And it's kind of this vying now for positions of power, jockeying like those politicians, who can get the best position in this new thing. The reality is that Jesus, when he's crucified, does have someone on his right and his left. Two criminals who are crucified with him. And that they are the ones who stand with him in this moment of glory. The lowest, if you like. Outcasts. And the disciples miss this point. And they're struggling. And Jesus says to them, look, you don't get it. If you want to be great, then you've got to become the least. I didn't come to be served. I came to serve and give my life for the world. That the world might find a way into deeper, truer life in God. Life of the ages. Life that will be lasting. Life now through death and beyond death. Life in the heart of God. And it's for everyone. It's an inclusive way, not an exclusive way. And I think this is what we miss. When we jockey for positions of glory, reflected glory and stuff, it's an exclusive place. Only a few can be there. I remember once, back in high school, I tried out, we had summer and winter sport, and I tried out for the tennis team once. And there were, a dozen, 15 people playing, wanting to try out for the 6 places in the team. So we did whatever we did, played, and the coach, the first 5 were sorted themselves out. They were there. The 6th place was up in the air. And the coach said, look, it's between me and this other guy, Tony. Come back next Wednesday, you can play 1 set of tennis. Whoever wins is in. The loser, sorry, you can go and play another sport. So we come back the next Wednesday and we start playing on this wretched asphalt court that wasn't flat. There was lumps and bumps and gravel, and the net was sagged in the middle but was too high at the sides. There was a bit of water on parts of the court because it had been raining. The wind was blowing, the balls were flat, And Tony and I played the worst set of tennis ever, and I'm sure the coach is thinking, what have I done? You know. Anyway, I managed to crawl across the line and win the set. I was chosen, and he missed out. And that's the kind of the way of the world, that we think about being chosen. There's only so many can be in. There's only so many who can be, you know, beautiful or successful or wealthy or powerful or whatever it is. And the rest of us ordinary ones miss out. But Jesus says the reign of God is for everyone. And the greatest there are those who are least. On that street in Sydney back in the 70s, there were hundreds, maybe thousands of people. Ordinary people just like us. Some were dressed up and some weren't. Some were homeless, some lived in mansions. There were lots of people. We noticed one. But there were many, many others just like us. And in the reign of God, God notices everyone. And everyone is included. And the least on that street is as important as the one who has the most money, the most success, the most power. We're all God's children, and we're all welcomed into the reign of God. The inclusive, beautiful reign of God, which brings us into life with hope and joy and peace. Will you follow in the way of Jesus? And letting go, being a servant, and finding life. Amen.